Welcome back to a new episode of the Beers of War podcast. Tonight, we're going to be discussing the biggest news in the gaming industry, and that is all the layoffs that's been happening so far since the start of the year. I think one article has it over 80 or 8,000 layoffs since the beginning of the year. I'm joined with Sir Bigness and Beer Ninja, so let's get right to it.
Beers of War Gaming Podcast.
The gaming industry is like layoffs everywhere. And it doesn't matter which company, they're all affected. Xbox laying people off, PlayStation's laying people off. I think the only people that haven't laid anybody off is Nintendo.
Yeah, and I think I saw something. The CEO of Nintendo kind of said, "We're not laying anybody off because if we lay people off, it's going to impact the quality of our games. You know, even if they're going through a slow period." I wholeheartedly agree with that. Gaming or making games is an arduous, long process, and you can't just treat this kind of the way we do in some cases, like with medical professionals or construction workers. You bring them on, you work them to death, and then you fire them when everything's not going good or when you get into a down season. That doesn't really work with games because it begins to compromise the experience, and I think that's something that we're starting to see with some of these games that are coming out and don't quite live up to the hype that they've been given. Ninja.
Me, honestly, piggyback with what you're saying. I mean, I agree with what you're saying, absolutely. And if I recall, was it Nintendo was the one who, instead of doing layoffs, they decided to do pay cuts and stuff like that, like the higher ups or whatnot. I thought I read that somewhere like that. Because they want to stay in the game. They want to keep all their players. I think we need to have the developers in there because that's what's going to make a great game. And here's Sony, kicking out what was it, 900 last week?
900.
Yeah, 900 last week and everything. All because they want to, say, for us to continue to make, we had to do this if we're going to continue to make great games and this and that. Well, I mean, you just cut your talent, And personally, and this is just my opinion, and I might get some flack for this. I mean, I'd like to hear what you guys think in the comments and everything. I think Sony is kind of overachievers when it comes to expectations of their game selling and everything. It's like they expect to make a game, they expect to make a certain profit off of it and everything. And even if it does very well, it's not good enough for them and everything. And I don't know where they're going to go with that. I mean, I don't think that's a what's the word? I don't think that's a formula that's really going to stay and work and everything. And they just got rid of a lot of top dog developers, right? I think people in Naughty Dog for one. I mean, those guys will work on the last. Yeah, Insomniacs, that's Spider-Man. Naughty Dog with The Last of Us, and Wolverine.
That's the Wolverine developers.
Yeah, so I don't know where they're going to go with this or anything. Is Sony even going to remain in the game? Are they going to remain with the consoles at this point or whatnot? I mean, it's just, I don't know, man. And then Xbox, they're kind of doing a similar thing with some of the layoffs and everything. It's just where do we go then? Is 2024 going to be not that good with games? I mean, I think it's going to be a good year for games, but wait until 2025. I mean, it's going to be like another E3 where Sony wasn't showing up and everything like that. Now they're not going to show up with a whole lot of games and everything. I don't know. That's just my soapbox.
I mean, me and Kevin were talking about this a little bit on Friday, and we kind of come up with some different opinions of why this is going on. And I think one of it is back during COVID, when everybody was confined to their house, gaming was the escape. You couldn't go outside. You weren't allowed to go anywhere. So everybody was buying consoles and games, and all these studios at the time saw all this money flowing in, and then they probably boosted their staff so they could start working on their next project. And then once people got the ability to start moving around again, gaming sales dropped, and now they're not making as much on the revenue side as they were before.
I saw something, a video. I've been following a fellow named the Black Okage. He was part of the rebirth of G4, and he does several gaming videos on a daily basis. One of the things that he mentioned is maybe the margins aren't as quite. That may have been his video, maybe somebody else's. I'm not sure. But the margins, they're making something like 6% margin on a video game now, where they were making 10 to 12% before. And I think that's part of it is maybe they're not making as much profit on a per unit basis as they were before. But if you make a game like Spider-Man, that's a $300 million budget. But they made money. That's the point, is they made money. And I also think because of games like Fortnite and Call of Duty Warzone, the Destiny, the continued success of Destiny. I mean, Destiny was as a franchise, now we're looking at almost 10 years of that game being in some form or fashion, still being out there. GTA being 13 years old now. GTA is a teenager, GTA 5. So you're looking at companies that want to try to maybe squeeze every bit out of a game that they can. And there are some games that are not conducive to that. And unless you catch lightning in a bottle, you're not going to have that kind of success out of every possible game. You're not going to get that out of Kill the Justice League. You're not going to get that out of Skull and Bones. There are so many of these quote unquote live service games, which is now becoming almost a dirty word in the gaming industry, that it's really killing the opportunity for anything else to shine. But then you see something like a Pal World or Helldivers come out, where it's not necessarily a hugely announced AAA title, but people get in it, they like it, they play it, and they make a bunch of money.
My heart goes out to the people that lost their jobs, all over across the board and everything, and to be honest with you, in some cases, this may actually be what they say, a blessing in disguise, because you got some of those top dogs, right? You got some of those developers, they're going to maybe probably try to start their own studios and then watch Microsoft coming in trying to buy them out or something like that, or Nintendo or something like that, so I could see something like that happening in the future and everything. Me personally, I just think it really is a mistake of what Sony's doing. And I think they have unrealistic goals that they set for themselves. And I think I had a conversation with you about this, Brandon, the other day about one of the games, which I haven't played, but it is going to be in my collection one day, and I am going to play it. It's a zombie game called Days Gone. And it was very well received. It did very well and everything, but it did not meet Sony's expectations when it came to sales and whatnot. And now people are trying to push for a sequel, and it's like they're not budging, or they're not going to pull on it or anything. And at the end of the day, and correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't it really about what the consumer wants at this point? And I mean, I get you got to put money, but you got to, what's that old saying? You got to spend money to make money, And Sony's not stupid. They've been in the game for a long time. They've made electronics and TVs and video game consoles, and they've been in it for a while. Hell, they still hold the record of the best-selling console, most selling console in the world, and that's the PlayStation 2, And I kind of want those days to kind of come back, because back then, that's where a lot of the love was put into the video games and everything. And that's where it was. And nowadays, you're just seeing, and it's like you said, Bigness, we're seeing games that are coming out that, we're getting day one patches and stuff like that, all because, and I guarantee you it's because of deadlines. It's because of budget strengths and all that kind of stuff, I mean, if you're going to make a product, you want to put all the love you have into it and everything. And sometimes I'm fine with games being delayed. And I think that's what a lot of these bigger AAA companies and developers and everything, they want to do, is try to get a game out as fast as they can and everything, so they can make that profit and whatnot. But the rewards is in the wait in itself, So, I mean, that's where I come from on that stance.
Well, when we were talking about, you made the comment a few days ago about the game Days Gone. So I did a little bit of research, just trying to figure out what was the reasoning behind not making a sequel. And I know a lot of it was before the game ever went to market, they had a major market or budget overrun, because originally I think they were like working with like 40, 60 people, and then they had to boost their group to like 120, and they estimated over the 2-year process that was extra $28 million over budget, not including everything else they had to add to it. Just the employees alone cost them $28 million more on the budget. And then PlayStation CEO or whoever was it in the article I was reading said that what kind of made it was the budget overrun, and then the scores they were getting on the reviews. Yeah, the fan reviews is probably one thing, but they were not they were getting mixed reviews, and I think the Metacritic score was in the low 70s, and that just kind of made it hesitant for them. So, but I mean, I think
they made their money though. They made their money back and then more.
yeah,
You know?
yeah, they sell any that depends on who you go. They sold anywhere between 7 and 10 million copies. So,
And
but
then you also have, go ahead.
But how many of those copies were at full price versus markdown prices and stuff like that? So you try to get an actual number of what the revenue is without digging into the financials of that company. But while you guys were talking, I went and looked it up. Just curiosity, Googled why game developers laying off people, and this is coming from Polygon. And they said reasons vary across companies, but industry leadership seems to agree that this is either constriction after overexpansion during the pandemic or a response to an economic downturn. I know outside the US, some of these other foreign countries like England and places like that are suffering a little bit of a recession. So you start taking some of their bigger markets and people are not buying as much games, they may not be dragging in the revenue right now. So
when you couple that too with the price increase, because most AAA titles now when they release are $70, and
right.
in England that's £70, which is roughly $90 American. And ultimately, I think it's some of this still boils down to the corporations that are making these decisions, because unfortunately, gaming has become a corporate entity, and they've got people that they've got to satisfy, which are the shareholders. And we've had that entire discussion probably ad nauseum. The word shareholder is almost a 4-letter word in our house, just because it seems like so many businesses, whether it be retail, whether it be travel, whatever, they end up becoming publicly traded companies, and then they end up going belly up because they're constantly trying to feed profits to shareholders instead of building back their own business. But I don't believe there's a game developer out there that wants to intentionally make a bad game. When the games get put together, the bean counters come in and say, we can't do this, can you add this to it? And I think that leads to, and this is kind of something that we mentioned early on, is some of these canceled games. The Mandalorian game that was supposedly in development, I believe it was Respawn was supposed to be doing that, wasn't it? Am I correct?
Yeah.
Respawn was doing a Mandalorian game. You cannot get a hotter property right now than the Mandalorian. Okay, that is the hottest property pretty much unless you put Taylor Swift in it. You can't get a hotter property than the Mandalorian. And
now we know it's going to be in the next Madden.
To get it canceled. And I wonder if it's not because some bean counter walked into the studio and go, hey, is this going to be a single player game? What can we do to make it live service? What can we do to make it multiplayer? And I don't think that's beneficial. Some games are just meant to be single player experiences, beloved.
Hold on, let me add something real quick.
Oh, sure. Go ahead.
You were talking about EA's and Respawn eliminating the Mandalorian game. This is from the website Screen Rant. As part of EA's reorganization, Respawn's linear Mandalorian shooter was canceled, with the company reportedly planning a shift toward massive communities, live service games, and large open world games, with reports of the Jedi franchise continuing. So they're going to carry on the Jedi series, but yeah, so it was probably going to be a single player or a local co-op game where you and a couple buddies can play together, no online PvP or anything like that, and they didn't like that idea.
Where the fuck is my tequila? Because that's exactly what I'm talking about.
What was it? Wasn't there another several years ago? Wasn't there another game, a Star Wars game that they canceled? It was like 1187 or something.
It was 1313.
Yeah.
1313, and it was a bounty hunter game. It wasn't a Mandalorian game, but it was a bounty hunter game where you were on Coruscant and you captured enemies. That game would have done numbers. It would have sold a bunch of copies. Yeah, you might have played through it once and enjoyed it, but you would have played through it and enjoyed it. I think we're getting close to wrapping it up here for this wonderful episode of the Beers of War podcast. So, gentlemen, what are we drinking tonight?
I'm drinking just some lemonade. Nothing special.
Boo this man. Boo him. Ninja?
Well, I decided to take a trip over to BJ's restaurant. Again, we're not sponsored by them or anything like that, but I do love a lot of their craft beers and different types styles of beers. I decided to pick up Zany Citrus Hazy IPA. It's actually pretty good. You know, I'm very picky when it comes to IPAs and everything like that, and it's giving me a pretty good little buzz right now. But that's what I'm sipping on tonight.
Well, I have got right now. I'm currently mixing Peach Pucker with a new Hendrix gin. This is Grand Cabaret, and if anybody knows me very well, I keep the Hendrix on me pretty much at all times, unless I'm at work. But yeah, I love me some Hendrix. So, fellas, let's lift him up. All right. From headquarters, from the library, and from the control room, Beers of War headquarters. Thank y'all for listening. Thank y'all for watching another great episode of the Beers of War podcast. Like, comment, subscribe, and gentlemen, if you drink, may you drink
with me.
me. Well, it's funny because Kevin just blinked.
Beers of War Gaming Podcast.